Hello, we are here at Scottish Gas Murrayfield Stadium. I'm Caroline Blair, joined as always by Chris Paterson, and today we have a very special guest as we are joined by the man who has just been announced as the first Scot to secure his ticket to Australia later this year. It's John Dalziel. We're going to be having a deep dive into his coaching journey, to hear his thoughts on all things rugby and to hear how he's feeling about securing that seat to Australia. So, John, we'll be doing a deep dive into your coaching journey, into your thoughts on rugby and talking all things rugby. But first, huge congratulations, and how are you feeling?
Thank you. Yeah, just I suppose it feels a little bit surreal at the moment. It hasn't really sunk in. Come off the back of a really busy Six Nations campaign, so just trying to process it really. Obviously excited and looking forward to the challenge ahead.
How did it happen? How did you find out that you were going to be joining the British and Irish Alliance coaching setup?
Well, actually, in the end, it happened pretty quickly, but it was something that was completely not on my radar at all. You're fully immersed in the Six Nations, already intense enough, and you know that there's a process going on. But I think Andy had a chat with Gregor, and I had a brief chat with him on the second follow week ahead of the Wales game, and then he said there's obviously a process talking to all the probable coaches from the home nations, and that I might get a phone call, and 2 days later I had a phone call, and it was very frank and straight to the point, so it was which was encouraging as well. But it was I suppose delight to hear the words coming from his mouth. Yeah,
it's really interesting, isn't it? I assumed there would be an application process. Maybe there is.
Like I put your hand up.
Yeah, and I think very much like that. Each line tour is different. It's its own, so it'll be Andy Farrell that drives us. And I just assumed you'd maybe apply or you'd ask them, but it just shows you how much analysis they do and I suppose respect they have for the job you're doing, that they're coming to you.
Well, yeah, I think there'd been a chat earlier on. Obviously, Andy had gone around all the teams and had a good long chat with Gregor around the players, and I know speaking to Gregor after that, he was very detailed on the players. He knew them very well, so it shows
It's coached against them enough. Right
exactly,
now,
yeah. And some of the personal stuff that he'd found out, and like he knew off them on and off the field. So there'd obviously been a process, and I think Gregor had mentioned everybody, but there wasn't much given away at the beginning. It was just like, yeah, I know, and then so he's obviously been going on behind the back end there, and I was just delighted that and totally surprised, to be honest. I think we're on, and you know that you're involved in a job at hand with the national team. You've been here like 5 years, and like you always trust and back in the work that you do. But like something like that always seems so far away, and like, as I say, it was never really on my radar to even give it another thought. You're just delighted to be pinch yourself every day being the Scotland forwards coach as it is. So that's a huge honour, and something over the next probably days and few weeks that'll probably sink in a bit more. Yeah.
Gregor was on the last tour as well. What's he had to say about this directly to you? And has he got any thoughts on what you should be looking out for and looking forward to?
No, Gregor's been brilliant. Obviously, the initial conversation, he didn't know a lot about what was going to happen. He said he's very keen because he asked a lot about you, and it was a good hour and a half. And he knows that they were going to be speaking to other coaches that work with players, and although it was meant to be secret, I thought, well, there seems to be a lot of players on the list. And I know he'd done a bit of due diligence around the back of it, but it was very brief. And then obviously after I got the news on the Saturday, Gregor was the first person I called, and we went a bit more depth. And he's been brilliant just around the advice he can give. And I'm going to lean on him pretty heavily over the next few months as well, because you're going into a brand new world there as well. And as an ex-player and somebody that's had the chance to coach there, Gregor knows the lines very well. So it'll be somebody I'll be relying on heavily over the next period.
You can trust yourself as well, though, because you've got a lot of playing knowledge, expertise, coaching knowledge that will come to. And you're obviously there because of what they see in you. So I assume that the advice that Gregor would give was be yourself, do exactly as you're doing, and that's the reason you're there. Looking ahead a wee bit, do you get a chance to influence, or I assume you do have a say in selection in the next few weeks and months? So does your eye turn to reviewing the recent Six Nations, and it goes to, I suppose, previewing a Lions tour and looking at who would be in the squad as a player?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. So obviously the campaign, the uniqueness of the Six Nations, week to week, the review process is pretty thorough anyway, and like culturally the differences between playing Wales or playing England. So you're kind of divvying that up all the way.
And you're
along.
learning as much about the opposition that you're now going to be potentially
Coaching.
working with
That's right, yeah.
during that review, aren't you?
Yeah, and I think you think you're chalking that off to week, but I was looking back this morning you go back to clips and you think, I'm looking at stuff from the Italy game, and it honestly feels like another lifetime away with that Italy game and 8-9 weeks ago, but it does feel like that length of time. So now we'll get a thorough review on the Six Nations to set up the team ahead of what's coming for Scotland in the summer tour as well, and make sure that we do that right. But I'd imagine, integrated now, the Lions commitments are starting to come up and available, and a selection will be key to the next few months. The players have obviously got a lot more rugby to be played between now and it being finalised, so there's more rounds of domestic and then Europe coming up as well, so thick and fast, yeah.
Moss's tapped into it and alluded to it there, as have you, but just going over that, I mean, the playing squad is announced on the 8th of May. That, as you say, gives time for them to play domestically, but it is important for Scottish Rugby as well, for your presence, to have you in that area of influence, and that's we've also got David Nusifora on board as well so far, and it's really quite important then for Scotland in terms of representation to have you in that position of influence in that space.
Yeah, but look, it's certainly good to have a Scottish voice, and certainly when Scottish players are being discussed, having a coach that's working with them is probably key, because you get a reflection of the rugby and the stuff that you see easily, but also a bit behind the person and the attributes that they might bring to a tour as intense as what we're going to face in the summer.
Yeah, that's a good point about the type of person, because Andy Farrell's big on that, as all coaches are, certainly now, and international coaches especially, is the person behind the player. Even more so when you're on a tour, and even more so when you're on a tour with people you don't know. Like, you want the right characters for it to be a success. You're going to be under a huge amount of stress and pressure. So your kind of knowledge and information that you can share on the potential Scottish candidates is really important. But
I bet you'll be getting looked after. You'll be the boys will be
as
keen
well, though. I mean, it's worth saying it's the players that have to perform if they want to go. That's the number one. They have to continue to perform, and I think we've got a lot of good candidates. Continue to perform as best you can. That'll be the determining factor first, but then the knowledge that John can share and can hopefully help a few of the Scottish players in a way, and other players. You'll know the other players from coaching against them, playing against some of them back in the day as well, so you'll have an idea.
You've brought in back in the day. I mean, I'm going to take a wee
how far back a
wee scenic route via the halcyon days, because you two, you ken each other very well. You know each other very, very well.
How about under 16s? I think we both grew up.
It's the halcyon days.
Primary school before that, but we're never in the same primary school team. John's a wee bit older than me, but we
just a year or something.
Just spent a lot of time together through age grade, and Gala age rugby. Obviously with Gala itself, and a long number of years, 30 odd years, GD.
Yeah.
Can you remember much?
Just chatting now about the time that's gone past, yeah. No, it's obviously Gala, like back in, I suppose, when Chris and I were coming through as youngsters, and I suppose born in 77, you're thinking that like the whole town's, everything that goes on in the town is geared towards the rugby on the Saturday, and the rugby club and the history that it's had. So I didn't have a lot of rugby in my family at the time. There wasn't any ex-rugby players or anything, but even my mother is an ex-hockey player, and going to Gala Academy, she was brought up on like Gala rugby, and for the day you're born, it was like, oh, he'll play for Gala, and the midwives at the Gala Cottage Hospital might be a ballet dancer, and but that's kind of how the town seen everything, and the town was geared to rugby club, and you grew up looking at all the Scottish legends that have played, and you dream and aspire to play for Gala, and both Chris and I were able to come through the age grade and play for Gala at the same time, in successful season pinnacle before Chris moved on to professional rugby in 1999. So
he was my under 18 captain as well.
Were you?
Aye.
Was he
we
well
played the same
behaved?
position then as
Well,
well.
I couldn't get a game.
10, 12.
I couldn't get a game. JD I was a standoff, and so was John, and he was better than me. But then I think that there must have been a reason. Let's get them both in the team. So he had the physical attributes to move to 12 at that point, and I slipped in at number 10.
And then Gary Callender came along and to coach Gala, and I said, look, I'll be straight with you. You can either be a quick back row or a really slow centre. So I was like, I think I'll go to forward. So, it happened pretty
A decent
quickly.
playing career as well, though, professional.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of that was we were lucky to have some really influential coaches when we were younger, our first coaches, like Johnny Gray, was a Gala legend, a South legend. He coached the South against the All Blacks, and to have him as a 5-6-year-old when you're learning the game all the way through to till we went to high school was unbelievable. And Jim Telfer, a big part of our careers as well, as it kind of bridged into professional rugby. So
you were never late for training in those days, I'll bet.
No, never. No.
Sorry, I'm jumping in, but did you think about coaching at that point?
Absolutely not. No, never on my radar. I think the journey into that was really strange. It was actually come Six Nations time at in the Borders, and I'd been lucky. I hadn't had many injuries, and I just had a slight groin and hadn't played a lot. And there was a Six Nations game, no professional game that weekend, and I just asked Steve Bates at the time. I said, "Look, there's a chance."
Bates was a coaching
at the Reavers. I said, "Look, there's a chance I could go." And playing at the time, we weren't able to go back and play for Gala because Gala won in the first division, so I was allocated to Melrose, and I played for Melrose previously, so it was a great fit. So he's like, "Well, speak to Craig Chalmers if Craig can fit you in," and yeah, we're happy you play. So I phoned up Craig, and he said, "Yeah, if you could come out and train, that'd be great." And then I went to training, and you end up training, but you end up helping little bits, and the first kind of passion was around the line out, and you get people there was the hooker at the time, Wayne Mitchell. They were like, "Oh, you can't throw the ball away," and then it was nothing to do with the throwing. You just started to go, "Well, if we could do this a bit better and get the timing right," and then so I fell into it. And I actually, the week after I played the game, and Craig said, "Oh, look, the boys said you made a really big impact. Would it be something you thought about?" And I thought, I've never thought about it, but I really enjoyed it. So for the last 2 years of the Borders, I was just going along and kind of helping them on a Tuesday or Thursday whenever we were at home, and I hadn't really thought about it as coaching. I just
it's a natural progression,
and that's kind of how I fell into it. Yeah.
What do you think it is that makes it land? That makes you a good coach?
Well, I'm not the type of person to think I'm a good coach, but I think the relationships is where it starts, and if you're able to connect with the people you're coaching as well. I think if you don't have a decent relationship with the people you're coaching, no matter how good a coach you are, you never got to get your message through as well. So I think maybe the way you can relate to different people, you've been through that as a player, you've seen it, and I suppose like going back to that, I never really had big rugby icons in my family or anything. It wasn't really expected in the family you'd go and do that. There was a lot of other more rugby families in the town, so I suppose that from a very young age, probably based on what your mum says in that, is that I'm determined I'm going to make sure that I play for Gala no matter what it takes, and I might not be the most gifted, but I'm going to work harder than anybody to try and do that. And it became around trying to make your mum and your parents proud. So I suppose that drive maybe in you as well, that if you can try and get that to rub off, or you have that connection with people, they can see what burns strong in you, that you can try and pass that on as well.
There's a real kind of, you can see it already, that a natural want to help others. And John, but you need the level of detail first. There's loads of people are enthusiastic and want to help, and they're great, but actually, and they're valuable as well. But in order to rise up to the ranks like John has, and we'll maybe touching it themselves, Scotland under-20, Scotland Sevens, Glasgow national team, now Lions, there has to be a detailed knowledge as well. And joking apart, John was a good 10, a good 12, understood the game from an attacking perspective, a defensive perspective, moved into the back row, runs a line out, runs the contact area, understands the contact area. So all that knowledge, through maybe not really being aware at the time, is still in there. And then with the personality, you've got to share it and the want to help people better. It's a really good mix. And
the ability to communicate it as well, because you can have all of those skills and not be able to land. And it goes back to that thing that you've said about relationships and connecting. That is a really interesting point about you, JD, is you have covered the backs and the forwards. And I suppose from that perspective, it's almost like the Johan Cruyff total rugby.
There's an 8-0 bench coming.
Yeah. Well, hopefully. I've tried to get, it took me 4 years to get to 16, but working well. It's happening now. Yeah.
But it's quite, it does put an interesting perspective on the game. And if you look at, even in the backs in itself, if you've got 12s who've played at 10, it's added value, isn't it? It's being able to take the skills and make them relatable for everybody.
Chris and I grew up obviously being the Borders. Sevens was a huge thing and a massive part of our career, and you played it, and I suppose you understand it. And that's kind of how I probably end up being that hybrid 6 or centre, because when you play a lot of like shorter when you're in the minis, it's 8-a-side or 9-a-side, and then you have your conventional sevens, and we played a lot of that when we were younger. It was a huge part of the borders, and you also learn both sides of it, and I was kind of just stuck in with no real, am I back, am I forward? I don't know, because like, the game had changed from being 9-a-side to 15, and they find the position, and that was it. And you sometimes just need that guidance to point you down.
So before training, when there's a game of touch, are you a forward or the back? What team do you play in?
Great question.
Definitely forward now. Yeah.
Loyalty's there, isn't it? It's
I
ingrained.
love it.
Yeah.
There's there are so many reasons why your appointment is a huge success for you and yourself as well. But from Scottish Rugby's perspective, your coaching journey has been in Scotland, and it's taken you to the elite, the top of the Northern Hemisphere game now, with a nod for the British and Irish Lions coaching setup. That's a huge success for Scottish Rugby in terms of that. And so talk us through your journey a wee bit and your decision to stay and to keep your skills in Scotland.
A really easy decision. Obviously, a real proud Scotsman, and I suppose coming for the borders of Heartland, growing up with the legends that played down there, I think rugby's been a huge part of my life, and I have other interests outside it, and you have family and stuff, but rugby's always been the thing that's like driven me, and Scottish Rugby's been excellent from the point of, as I say, that first time falling into it down at Melrose, and then being asked to come along to quite quickly. I was asked to do the under-20s not long after that, and I was still playing and coaching, and so I had the best that you weren't just coaching, you were able to like still, I suppose, contribute to the team as a player coach at Melrose, and working alongside Craig Chalmers and guys like Sean Leline, giving me the first chance with the under-20s. So you're learning the whole time, and I was lucky enough to be doing that when I was still playing a little bit as well, and able to try and influence a little bit with what you say and what you do, but also then to get your actions on the field done. And then when I stopped playing and moved into head coach and just coaching it, I felt I had a really good foot in the game. I had 6 or 7 years experience of coaching there, and the under-20s was excellent for giving me, I suppose, that little bridge from being a professional player, that you try and make the club game as professional as possible, but that link back to the elite side of the game and the analysis and being in camps and being around it for more full time was excellent. So that was a great progression as well. And
Sevens as well, head coach, which was a big ask, wasn't it? But in terms of running the programme and driving it on a small squad, really, you don't have the number of assistant coaches and support staff. That was a big part of development as well, wasn't it? Just understanding the management of running a side.
You're right, and I think, look, that's another thing that Scottish Rugby did very well. Like the Sevens programme, when we had it, was excellently beneficial for players in terms of development tool, but also coaches. And obviously the London Scottish experiment as well that we had for a year that I was able to do alongside my 20s, and I went down there, and when I come back from there, with 2 pro teams, there was kind of established staff at both, and it was like it's probably 18 months or 2 years before there's an availability somewhere. You have a chance you can be an assistant at Edinburgh, or Sevens was realistic. And to be honest, I thought, do I want to leave the journey of 15s to go into Sevens, which I love Sevens. I absolutely love playing domestically, internationally, but you're thinking, I'm on a journey of 15s coaching's where I want to be, and but you go there and you understand. Scott Johnson, the director of rugby at the time, was around thinking the development towards being a head coach or being a good assistant around the programme and budgets. It's not just the rugby. And the 2 years I had, we had the Commonwealth Games, we had a World Cup. So there were 2 huge years to travel the world, and I loved that. I loved the development, and I think the Sevens game was on a cusp that they were going through a few law changes that are now in the 15s games, so around the contact area. And so I think the development of the areas that I coached at Sevens was amazing for just going back to the one-on-one technical, I suppose, skill set that you need. And you look at back 3 or backs now, a lot of the breakdowns that they see are almost like 7 breakdowns, and the way it's refereed as well. So and there's loads of growth in that.
Kick-off reception, kick chase, all that sort of stuff. The other thing about that is it's maybe worth noting the number of players who are starting now that, you think back to the Sevens circuit, you have Darcy Graham, I think, was in and around the Sevens, Darcy with you, and then Kyle Rowan, these guys. And obviously then when you were with the under-20s, like Blair and Xander and all these guys who have been part of your journey as players, and they're still part of that now.
It is, and it's such a, that's where when I got the opportunity at first with the national team with Greg, it was brilliant because I thought
You knew them all.
it was probably my 7-8 years with the 20s. It was like that group of all the kind of 8 groups we'd had. There'd been somebody that featured in it, so I felt it was a really good group that was well connected to me as well and understood and knew me, and I knew them. And it was, although probably I felt it was quite early in my career to be given that opportunity, I thought it's actually probably the best time in my career because it's the best group and it's the best fit for me.
So you knew you wanted to end up in 15s, but you really trusted the process, you trusted the flow, and were on that journey as it was playing out. Was there a game or a turning point for you where you were, right, this is it, things are moving, this is a clear marker, the direction of travel that I want, where I want to end up?
Yeah, I think, look, obviously when you get into anything, if you've been a player or a coach, I think straight away once I kind of decided to retire for the rugby, I'd signed for Exeter in, I think it was 2007. Once we'd kind of found out that the Borders weren't going to be there, like everybody at the time, I was getting to nearly 30-year-old, you're like, do you stay in Scotland? There might be limited opportunities, and it'll depend if the Borders go, if Edinburgh and Glasgow want you. So I went out there, I had an opportunity and a connection with Exeter at the time, so before the kind of Christmas time that year, I made a decision I was going to go there. I was going to stay if the Borders stayed, but we had an agreement there, and then my wife fell pregnant with our oldest, my first kid, the daughter, and it was like, the longer that went on, this is going to be incredibly hard for my wife to try and be so far away from the family down at Exeter, and at the time they were in the Championship, so they were on a great, I suppose, trajectory to where they were going to get to, and the plan was all in place, but I had to look at, it's a great decision for me, but probably not at the family, and at that point is where Melrose had said, well, look, if you do stay, then be a player coach, this is what, and it gets you here with your family. So I made that decision, and really quickly, I suppose I had the burning desire that I wanted to make Melrose as successful as we could, and we went on a really good journey right away of, I suppose, growth. Melrose were sitting 7th, 8th in the Premiership then, and within 2 or 3 years we're making that jump to cup finals and playoffs, and then to eventually winning it in 2011. So that was kind of the desire, the competitiveness in you to try and year on year show that progression, and then same with the 20s, and I suppose same with your journey, yeah.
And to see the rewards as well. So it wasn't just that desire to do it. You were seeing it happen, and it was playing out. What was
Hard work along the way as well.
Yeah, a lot of hard work. Yeah, you make that sound.
That's
really...
one thing. Like I think it's overlooked by coaches,
yeah.
or when people, I think about coaches, it's hours, isn't it? Like it's a proper. Like you think as a player, it's hard. You're doing all the training, but you actually then go home, you recover. The hours in terms of preparing for the next game whilst you're reviewing the last game, and having everything ready for the players, it's a massive commitment.
I always have a wee giggle when players say, I'm ready to retire from international rugby. I'm thinking about coaching, so I could see more of the family. Well, you might want to go into someone else.
And yeah, you're right. And look, everybody's busy in every job they do, but we're a family quite close, and then you get caught up in the. And the one thing with Scottish Rugby has been brilliant that it's never been settled in one thing. It was either Melrose with the 20s, and then the 20s with the London Scottish thing bolted on, and I was still doing both of them when I moved into the 7s, so you're almost like 3 jobs you're moving, and then I thought finally when I get to the 7s, it's at least every Saturday you're going to be able to go and watch rugby. And I remember coming back the first week, being in 7s training and thinking, this is excellent, I can actually go and play with the kids at the weekend, and say, come on then boys, we'll go and play, because every night they're, Dad, come and play, and you're like, sorry, 2 seconds, and then I thought the 7s is going to be great, and then you turn around and they've grown up, and they're like, I'm not playing with you, Dad, I'm going out with my mates. And I remember my wife saying, you're too late, they're kind of gone, but you get that back, but time goes past so quickly.
They'll be proud of you with this news though. There'll be a bit of pride. I know 3 kids, but 2 of your boys play as well. They'll be mad keen for some line stash, will they?
Oh, I would imagine.
They'll be delighted about a trip too.
My youngest have been sworn to secrecy, so I have to check on every day. You better not say anything at school, so he's...
but they'll be proud of. And see the hard work and the effort of your family. I know you spoke about Mum and Dad there as well, and they would be really proud of the achievement. It's a massive achievement, so we look forward to the summer. Yeah.
It does, however, mean that you won't be involved in Scotland's jaunts, if you like, in the summer, and really important tests that are going to play out there. You will be back in time for the Autumn Nations series at the end of it. But just a quick word then on leaving the Guinness Six Nations for the men's team behind and moving into the summer, which, as I say, you won't actually be here for.
Yeah, it's look, I think probably the last 2 years with the way we've run the summer tour and the progression, the depth that we've tried to, I suppose, breed into the squad a little bit. We've got a couple of positions where we're aging or we don't have masses of depth that we've worked hard over that period. And I'm sure the summer will be another opportunity that we're hopeful we'll have a few Scottish Lions and there'll be a chance for some younger players to get more opportunities. We've seen even the last round of the Six Nations with Ewan Johnston, Marshall Sykes and Ben Muncaster, all three of them getting their Six Nations debut coming in, that there is growth there again, and these guys that hopefully push through the next few months and get on that tour in the summer and grow even further ahead of the autumn, and hopefully we get to the autumn with, I say, some more lines and some caps and experiences from our players, but also some younger players getting an opportunity in the summer that we have I suppose a bigger pot to pick from come the autumn.
Moss is really good at, he doesn't like me to get too far ahead of myself, but there's nothing I love more than thinking about it in the context of a Rugby World Cup cycle. But it is actually really important at this point as well, when you're giving those opportunities to the younger players who you're going to need to develop over the next couple of years.
Getting closer, right enough.
Definitely, yeah. As soon as you're over the last World Cup, it was the next cycle. But look, I think we've started that process, and I think last year playing against America and Canada and Chile and Uruguay and having the 4 tests rather than just settling on the 2 that were given, we gave opportunity there. And guys like Ewan Johnston coming into that camp for the first time, the progression from him from the summer, he was involved during the autumn in the Portugal game only, and then trained with us all the way through the Six Nations and gets his opportunity right at the end. So we're trying to grow that depth a little bit, and the summer will be hugely important again about growing that even further, but also getting more continuity as a team. We've changed the way we're playing hugely over the last period, although and we're still learning a little bit around the implications around that, and part of the review will be there. But it's an exciting brand of rugby that we are trying to put out there as well, not just a winning brand, and we'll look to try and grow that even further through the summer.
And New Zealand to look forward to at the end of the year too.
Absolutely. One thing I know I keep asking questions, but another one popped into mind, just in terms of what you'd like to get from the tour to Australia Lions. You'll be exposed to new players, potentially slightly different methods of whether it's technique at scrum or line out or contact or breakdown or attack, defence. There'll be a lot for you personally to contribute, as we know, but there'll be a lot to learn as well, and bits that can hopefully help your development for the years once you get back.
Absolutely. I think we've talked about that a lot. Like Gregor has a really good in terms of, for us coaches, the learning environments. We're always out, as you said, we're down in Baths or Saracens and all of the clubs. Toulouse we've spent a lot of time with. But just the opportunity to different cultures with teams that we're trying to, I suppose, outthink and try and understand what their philosophies are and how they train it and how they get it across, but also their approach, as you said, to the breakdown. We've always had Ireland up there on a real pedestal around the way that they're similar to us, a high possession team, but the way that if you look at Leinster and how that transfers in for Ireland around their contact and breakdown, and so it'll be interesting there to see their players' approach in different cultures around England and the experience that their players, and I suppose learn both ways. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity to learn and try and grow through that period as well.
And finally, the 2025 isn't just a Lions year, it's also, in terms of the context of Scottish Gas Murrayfield Stadium, it's our 100th anniversary here. What are your memories? Did you have any standout memories?
Oh, I know one, John.
Are they coaching? Are they playing? I'm sensing.
I know I played one.
Chris Paterson scoring 8 points when he beat Kelso 8-3 in the 1999 Cup Finals. A big one.
Didn't even have to think about it.
That was a big time. It was a big day, that, actually. A big few weeks for us.
I can't believe we've brought that up because he's a Lions coach.
Yeah, no.
This is his day.
But as a young guy playing for Gala and getting the opportunity the journey to get to here was brilliant, but that day was special. And I think the early memories of the old stadium coming on the school buses to the internationals, and I remember the amazing French teams of the 80s coming here, and the cockerels on the pitch, and the real atmosphere, and as I say, that link that we all had as borderers to rugby anyway, and then seeing the border players and Gala players out in the playing for Scotland was amazing. It just kind of links me, and the places had some special memories. Yeah.
Ground staff would have something to say about the cockerels on the pitch nowadays, but John Dalziel, hearty congratulations to you on a richly deserved appointment to the British and Irish Lions coaching setup. We wish you nothing but the very best for the tour to Australia later this year, and keep us posted. Keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Well,
Thanks,
Judy.
guys.
Thank you.